Hello, welcome to this week's video. I hope you're well. I want to firstly wish a full shalema to Johnny Mallet, who had an operation this week. We hope to see up and about very, very soon. Also remind you, of course, Pesach is on its way, just over a week to go, and we're looking forward very much to being together in Shul, at the Shul Seder, communal Seder, and throughout Yom Tov. And please do join us. Please make an atmosphere of togetherness and celebration over the Yom Tov. We're going to read this week it's really a part 2 of the story of a Metzora. A Metzora was somebody who got a spiritual affliction, which we call it sora'as, something that could be like patches on the skin or even on housing and clothing. And it came, we're told, the rabbis tell us, for various types of sinful speech, for haughtiness, for particularly for lashon hara, for slandering a fellow, another person. And the rabbis tell us that Metzora, the beginning of Metzora, really deals with the purification process. A person who had this sora'as was tomei. He had to be excluded. He had to live outside. They had an isolation. We're of course familiar with this idea because we have just had to deal with the pandemic of COVID, which thank God we're now coming out of. So we're familiar with the idea of being isolated. So Metzora had to be isolated, not because this was a physical disease that could spread like coronavirus through the air particles. This was because the person demonstrated that they were unfit to be with others because they were not behaving in an appropriate manner for society to flourish. So therefore they take time out and they have to be alone for a few days and think about their lives and their behavior and how they can improve. And yet when it comes to Metzora, when it comes to this week's Sedra, where we learn about the purification process, it's interesting to note that he has to become pure. He has to go through this process straight away. The commentaries of Aaron Levine points out, he says that when normally a person who becomes impure, let's say they had to, God forbid, bury a dead body, he says they don't have to become pure straight away. In fact, that's why when we have a few weeks ago we had the Parshas Parah, the rite of the red heifer, because people would have to be reminded, Pesach is coming, you're going to need to have a korban Pesach, a sacrifice, you need to be pure. But lots of people didn't bother so much whether they were pure or impure. But when it comes to the purity of the Metzora, it has to happen straight away. And he says, why? Because other impurities, you didn't have to be isolated. You could say, I'm impure, so I couldn't eat maybe certain types of food that came from tithes or that came from sacrifices. There were restrictions, but I can live amongst society. He says, but the Metzora, this person is isolated. Until he becomes pure and goes through this purification rite of the Metzora, he's going to be on his own. And it's very, very damaging for a person not to be on their own for too long, to be isolated for too long. It's very important to be part of society, to mix with people, to have social interaction. We are social animals, we are social beings. We have to be with others, and that's how we best live our lives. And I thought that's very, very relevant. Some people perhaps are still nervous, but the figures are clear that COVID is becoming safer and safer. In fact, I saw that the deaths this year were no worse than in a regular flu season. This is all documented fact. And it was lovely to see the ladies coming together this week for an evening and people just enjoying themselves. And that's what we're planning to do in the shul, make more and more coming together events. And particularly, of course, we encourage people to come to daven. That's what we're here for. That's what shul exists for. And therefore, if Yom Tov, even if you've been nervous until now, it's time to recognize that the dangers are not what they were, and it's a reasonable and appropriate measure to come and be part of society and join in. And we'd really love to encourage you to join in and see you very soon. Thank you very much. All the best.